You know what I've been thinking about? I've been thinking about Pink Floyd a lot. I've been really getting back into them. When I was a teenager, growing up in the 80s, I was crazy about Pink Floyd, like nuts. I thought I was Pink Floyd's biggest fan. And I thought I was special because I could differentiate Roger Waters singing from David Gilmour's. I thought that made me an expert on Pink Floyd. Little did I know that me and 1 billion other people like Pink Floyd, and I wasn't all that unique. But at the time, I thought I was, and I love Pink Floyd. I tell you, my uncle got me into them with The Wall. That was he set me in his entertainment, in his room, his rec room, which had an amazing. He always had the best stereos. So he set me in the center of his room, and he put on the helicopter going across. You remember that? So I got into Pink Floyd. I love Pink Floyd, and anything that my uncle liked, I liked too. He was a great influence musically on me, and Supertramp, all these other great 70s bands. But so when I went out to buy my first Pink Floyd album, I couldn't afford The Wall because it was a double album. It was just too expensive. So I had to get. They just come out the year before they came out with the final cut. I thought, well, this will do. It's the final cut. So I remember bringing it home and listening to it, and I already kind of knew what it sounded like because the year before, when it first came out, there was a DJ on a certain radio station that said that played the entire album. I remember that. He goes, "I'm going to play the entire Pink Floyd album front to back," and he did. And I think I listened to it. I can't remember. I was very young at that point. I was in grade 9. I'd have to figure out what year, 1982 maybe? Was that when the year the album came out? I think 1982. I'll put the correction somewhere on here if I'm wrong about that. But anyhow, so yeah, I was in grade 9 and listened to the whole thing, I imagine, on the radio. And then I remember the DJ at the end of it saying something like, "Okay," because I mean, it was one of the most depressing albums ever created. And Roger Waters is a very angst-ridden, morose fellow. At least he was back then, which I liked. That's what I liked about him, because I guess I was kind of emo back then. There was no emo, there was no goth, but like whatever that was back then, I think that's probably what I was. So I ended up getting the final cut on a tape. And I thought I had that tape. I went upstairs to my box of tapes, which really literally consists of one tape right now. And I guess I must have thrown it away. It was the final cut, the typical cover that you know, and it was a white tape and had a chip out of it. I remember that, had a chip. But I would play it in my, the only tape I found was, just to prove that I actually did go look for my tapes, was this tape from Roger Waters. Amused to death, but maybe I'll talk about that one sometime. But anyhow, where was I saying before this segue completely distracted me? Okay, so yeah, so I remember taking the plastic off the tape. It was kind of hard. You had to, the plastic. It was just like any plastic nowadays. I mean, it was just as tough. You had to put your fingernail into the side there and like kind of just. Or a knife or something and just slice it and then peel the tape off of it. It was a pain in the ass, and if you weren't careful, you could actually crack the tape case just trying to rip the plastic off too quick, which as a teenager is something that you do. You just do it fast and sloppy because you want to get the frickin' thing out, right? So anyhow, I had a Walkman, a Sony Walkman, or if not a Sony Walkman, then a rip-off, some sort of no-name version of that. And I remember sitting on the lower bunk of my bunk beds, and because I shared the room with my brother, and put the headphones on, and I started listening to it. And you know what? It's like, I think my first impression of it wasn't all that. I was kind of lukewarm to it. I don't think my first listening to it was all that. But I did grow to like it, and in fact, I grew to love it because it was literally the only Pink Floyd album I had, or tape, that I had. I didn't have anything else. My uncle had everything else, and I lived in Barrie, Ontario, or at that time, I lived in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and he lived in Toronto, so there was a bit of a distance for me to travel, and none of my friends had Pink Floyd albums at the time either, so I was alone. I've been re-listening to it now, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it. I don't think it's aged entirely well. I don't think it has. It's no longer my favorite Floyd album, but it ceased to be my favorite Floyd album when I discovered other albums. And typically a lot of their '70s stuff, but. Because I don't think I'm atypical or know much more about Pink Floyd than probably you watching this. I'm imagining you're watching this just because, once you've watched everything and know everything about Pink Floyd, you just start to listen to other people and listen to their stories. And that's all this is really about. It's just my story about listening to the final cut. That's all. So, but I will break down the songs and what I thought about them. I kind of liked Roger Waters' angsty approach to this. I didn't realize that this was a sort of a sequel or a spiritual sequel, I guess you would call it, or just a sequel of leftovers, of ends from The Wall. The Post-War Dream, though, I think it started off kind of just bland, and I think maybe that kind of threw me off. I did like the end of it, where it got a little bit going, a little angsty, but then that was quick and kind of died out. Possible Pasts. I like when Waters gets loud and cranky. That's when he, when he's going soft, and then all of a sudden he's just saying, why, and and his just angst, and as a kid you love it because you can feel the tension and like he's almost crying, and he's emoting huge emotions, and you love that, and I did too. It was very theatrical, and getting a tear in my eye just thinking about it. It was good. I really liked it. One of the few, it was I liked the guitar in that one. That was a pretty short one, if I remember. I have them written out here because at one point in time I would know every song and I would know everything about it. This is going back in like the 80s and the 90s or early 90s, but you know what, now I had to write them out because I no longer remember. I don't know the order of them anymore. And the Tygers, when the Tygers broke free, okay, I did actually. I can't feign surprise. I did know that that was put on the final cut. But I mean, we're getting into some sort of schizophrenic movement here because when I was growing up, the Tiger broke free was a loose end from the Wall album. Didn't fit, and you could only find it on the movie. That was really the only real venue where I could watch it. Was on my version of The Wall, a videotaped, like a fifth generation videotape of The Wall, complete with like that sort of fuzzy, stretched tape sound and whatever of when the Tygers broke free. But I mean, and then probably tried to transfer it from the video to press play on my tape recorder and put the microphone of the tape recorder right up to the TV set and made a audio tape version of it that way. So, we're talking extremely lo-fi version of when the Tygers broke free all my life. And now here it is. It's on the final cut. So it just appeared. And does it belong there? I don't know. It's just, they're leftover Floyd tunes, or Wall tunes, so I guess it does, right? The Hero's Return. I liked it. I didn't, and at that point in time, obviously, I didn't quite know the story, the longer version of the story about the teacher and the Wall, and how he kind of bled over into the final cut. I think that's kind of neat. There's a little bit of a neat segue there. The Gunner's Dream. One part I thought was really neat, and I started to, and what I really liked about this song was the part where he says, "And hold on to the dream," and then that turns into the sax. And they've done that before. They've done that on the Animals album. They did that, sort of turning a vocal part of the lyrics, the singing, into an instrument. And I bet you that's something that Water was like, yeah, let's try that again, type of thing. And I thought that was really cool. But however, know that I did not hear, at this point in time, I had never heard Animals. I didn't even know Animals existed. I think the only Floyd tune I really knew about at this point was probably Money. That might be it. Money, and maybe, I was going to say, Welcome to the Machine, but I don't think so. Because I remember, Wish We Were Here was the second album we got, and when I heard Welcome to the Machine, I was blown away by it. Once again, teenager, but anyhow, I digress because we're talking about So where was I? Oh yeah, Paranoid Eyes. I love that tune. I thought it was. I thought it was a great. It was well written. One thing we have to say is Roger Waters. His lyrics to me, and they still are. You know, some people said they're overwritten. I don't buy that. I think he's a great lyricist. I think he's a poet. I think he deserves accolades for it. I rarely see anybody ever talk about Roger Waters as a poet, but I do believe that he's very clever with his words and his lyrics, and you know, his rhyming schemes and couplets and things that he does. Very clever. Anyhow, I thought Paranoid Eyes was indicative of that. Showed a lot of his skill as a songwriter, and it was, you know, like the pie in the sky turned out to be miles too high. I mean, simple, but just, you know, beautiful. But and the way he sang it too, I liked it a lot. Get Your Filthy Hands Off My Desert. The only really part I liked about that song was I would say the the launching of the missile and the explosion, because it started in one ear and moved over to the other ear. So I would listen to it on headphones, and I always thought, that's cool. Guitar solo time now. David Gilmour finally makes a bigger appearance in Fletcher Memorial Home. That's probably one of my, I think, the favorite, maybe one of my two favorite guitar solos on the album. There's not much to choose from, obviously. Southampton Dock. I learned that song. I like that one, so I learned that on guitar, playing on an acoustic guitar. The Final Cut was my favorite song on the album, possibly my favorite soul, I would say, on the album too. Like I said, not much to choose from there, really, is there? And Not Now, John, I never liked it. You know, I think I actually like that song now more than I ever did. And I probably like that song least. It was my least favorite song on the album. It somehow just did not seem to fit. And you know, funny, I listen to the album now and it does fit. So I don't know what I was thinking back then or why. If anybody knows, like, possibly give me a reason. Why, when I first listened to this album back in the 80s, 82, 83-ish, somewhere around there, did I believe that song didn't belong? And now I see that it fits, or I don't. Am I removed? Maybe I was so immersed into Floyd back then, I was looking at it one way, and now that I'm not necessarily as immersed, although I am, trust me, I see it a different way, or I don't know. Maybe I'm just older. My ears are decrepit. I don't know. Comments, please, anybody. You younger folk out there, perhaps you know something I don't know or have forgotten. Two Suns in the Sunset. I love that tune, but I watched a video. On YouTube. It was a podcast, not a video. It was a podcast, and they totally ripped this album apart. And I was mildly insulted, but I was having too much of a fun time. I was going along with everything they said, and I agreed with probably about 95%. And one thing they said about this song is like how over the top it was, and you know, like lines like Roger Waters talking about I can't remember the actual lines, but like, you know, when the windshield melts and my tears evaporate, leaving only charcoal to defend, and you hear the screaming of a child saying, "Daddy, Daddy." And, you know, this is about the nuclear holocaust type thing, and just how overblown that was, and how, you know, looking back on it, how Roger Waters was like just took it to a level, like a theatrical level that was, you know, like, Roger, you got to tone it down a bit, and we all know that now, right? We know that, you know, Roger, you got to tone it back, and or dial it in, or dial it back. So anyhow, that's it. That's my memories of that album, and you know, it's no longer in my favorites, but there's moments of it. There's periods of that album that I just think they're still powerful, and they're very good, and they're still very Floydian, or Roger's idea of Floyd, and which I've always appreciated as much as any other idea of band members' idea of what Floyd is. And so, you know, it has a place in my heart, and I'll always find it. I'll always hold it dear to me, and I wish I had the tape, but I don't. Anyways, everyone, take care. If you like this video, I always mess that up. What I mean to say is, if you think just like the video. I don't know how else to put it. Like the video, please, and subscribe. I don't have any subscribers yet, so it would be nice to get one. And that's it. So stay tuned. Bye.